Every few months, a critical incident captures national attention. A video surfaces. People immediately begin asking questions. What happened? Who was right? Who was wrong? Could this have been prevented? Those are understandable questions, but I'd like to ask a different one. What does a police department owe its officers before an event that cannot be predicted? Notice what I'm not asking. I'm not asking whether any particular officer acted appropriately. I'm not asking whether a particular department succeeded or failed. And I'm certainly not suggesting that every critical incident points to a problem in training. I'm asking something much simpler. What does meaningful preparation look like when the next incident cannot be scripted? Because that's the reality of policing. Police officers don't respond to rehearsals. They respond to unfolding events. They don't receive complete information before arriving. They don't know who will cooperate or who will resist. They don't know whether a routine call will remain routine. Uncertainty is not the exception. It's part of the profession. Which leads me to something I've been thinking about for a long time. Police departments cannot prepare officers for every event. No department can. No academy can. No instructor can. And no lesson plan should promise that. But I do believe police departments are expected to prepare officers for something much more important. Not every incident, but the recurring constitutional decisions that appear across thousands of different incidences across this nation. That's a very different idea. A police department doesn't know what tomorrow's call will be. But it does know officers will face uncertainty. It knows officers will have to assess changing conditions. It knows officers will have to communicate under stress. It knows that the officers will have to balance public safety with constitutional responsibility. It knows officers will have to recognize when circumstances have changed. Those aren't rare moments. They're everyday policing. That's why I've become less interested in asking whether an officer was trained for a specific event. I'm increasingly interested in asking whether the police department can explain how it prepares officers for reoccurring constitutional decision-making when the future cannot be predicted. Those are different conversations. One searches for a lesson plan. The other seeks to understand preparation. Preparation is larger than instruction. Preparation includes leadership, supervision, reinforcement. Preparation includes learning from experience. It includes helping officers recognize that every situation is changing and that good judgment often requires adapting to those changes. Now let me shift for a moment. If you're responsible for leading a police department or overseeing police training or developing policy, this isn't simply a question about compliance. It's a question about responsibility, because officers inherit the preparation their department provides. They inherit the expectations that are emphasized. They inherit the priorities that are reinforced. They inherit the standards that leadership consistently communicates. That doesn't eliminate personal accountability. Every officer remains responsible for individual decisions. But preparation belongs to the police department. And I think those are two different responsibilities that deserve to be understood separately. Now, let me speak to the attorneys and judges. When a Section 1983 case reaches your desk, the incident, understandably, becomes the center of attention. The facts, the evidence matters. The constitutional analysis matters. My work begins somewhere else. It begins before the incident. I'm interested in understanding how a police department prepared its officers for reoccurring constitutional decision points long before anyone knew what the next incident would look like. That's not a legal opinion. It doesn't answer liability. It doesn't resolve causation. And it certainly doesn't replace the legal analysis. It asks a different question. Can the police department explain how it prepared officers for the kinds of constitutional decisions that occur every day, even though the specific event itself could never have been predicted? I think that's an important distinction because unpredictable events do not eliminate the need for preparation. If anything, they explain why preparation matters. Preparation isn't about predicting tomorrow. It's about developing police officers who can exercise sound constitutional judgment when tomorrow refuses to follow the script. That's a different way of thinking about police accountability. Not because it changes the law, but because it changes where the conversation begins. Perhaps the most important preparation isn't preparing officers for one incident. Perhaps it's preparing them for thousands of incidences that haven't happened yet. To me, that's one of the most important responsibilities a police department carries. And it's one of the reasons I believe police preparation deserves to be examined with the same seriousness as the incidents that eventually bring everyone into a courtroom. I'm Tom Loglisci. Thank you for listening to Police Praxis Audio Briefings.